course, we do want to begin with that stunning moment making history in the United States. A Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict former President Trump in connection with a case involving a $130,000 hush money payment he allegedly made to adult film star Stormy Daniels.
The unprecedented move setting up what will be a closely watched legal battle through uncharted waters. For his part, the former president has denied any wrongdoing. We have every angle of this story covered, beginning with NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake outside the New York District Attorney's office. Garrett?
The grand jury handing up their historic indictment 2 months to the day after they were first impaneled. Now Donald Trump, former president of the United States, will have to come to the courthouse here in Lower Manhattan and face a judge. Grand jurors in Manhattan setting off a stunning legal earthquake Thursday, voting to indict a former president for the first time in history. The political aftershocks rippling across the country this morning, even while the specific charge or charges against Donald Trump remain secret and under seal. The district attorney's office saying it has, quote, contacted Mr. Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's investigation centers on the $130,000 2016 payment allegedly made to buy the silence of adult film actress Stormy Daniels, who claims she had an affair with Mr. Trump a decade prior. Mr. Trump has denied the affair or any other wrongdoing. On social media Thursday night, blasting the investigation as a, quote, political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history, and labeling DA Bragg a disgrace. The former president adding he, quote, cannot get a fair trial in New York. Republican lawmakers rallying to the former president's defense, from longtime allies.
This is going to destroy America. We're going to fight back at the ballot box.
To even potential 2024 campaign rivals.
The unprecedented indictment of a former president of the United States on a campaign finance issue is an outrage.
Congressional Democrats have largely praised the indictment decision as upholding the rule of law, while the White House has thus far stayed silent. The criminal processing of a Secret Service protectee will be another historic first, as Mr. Trump will have his mugshot taken, fingerprints, and even a DNA swab collected, all while his detail of agents stand guard. The case at the center of the indictment took off when Mr. Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, pled guilty to campaign finance violations in connection with those hush money payments, which the Department of Justice called an attempt to influence the 2016 presidential election. Cohen said he was acting at the direction of the former president, but Mr. Trump has pushed back, saying he was the victim of extortion by Stormy Daniels. Federal prosecutors ultimately decided not to pursue charges, but all eyes are now on Bragg as he makes his case against former President Trump. Multiple sources familiar with the grand jury's work say prosecutors also questioned some witnesses about earlier hush money payments made to a former Playboy playmate named Karen McDougal, although it's not clear yet if those payments are related to any charge or charges filed against Mr. Trump. Now, as for the scene here in New York City, security on Tuesday is expected to be tight. The NYPD has already told all officers to report to duty today in uniform, ready to be deployed ahead of possible protests.
Garrett Haake, thanks so much.
Well, Trump's legal team is speaking out this morning. His attorney, Joe Tacopina, appeared on the Today Show talking about this case and what's next. Take a listen.
Have you been told anything about the nature of the charges in this indictment?
No, I mean, specifically, no. We don't know how many counts. We don't know what the actual charges are. But we do know it centers around, a legal, very common confidentiality agreement that was signed years and years ago with Stormy Daniels and between her attorneys and Michael Cohen. Those were the parties to the confidentiality agreement. So it's nothing more than that, which is really what makes this shocking. This is a historic case, a monumental case, a case that will have wide-reaching ramifications. And it really, today, I feel very concerned about the rule of law in this country because it endangers the rule of law.
Do you expect the president to voluntarily surrender? Will he come for his arraignment?
We're working out those logistics right now, Savannah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he's not going to hole up in Mar-a-Lago. So he'll face this, and we'll face it, and we'll be successful, I'm sure.
Do you expect this to go to trial? Do you see any scenario in which you or the former president would take a plea deal?
Zero. First of all, I'm not taking a plea deal to anything, but President Trump will not take a plea deal in this case. It's not going to happen. There's no crime. I don't know if it's going to make the trial because we have substantial legal challenges that we have to front before we get to that point.
And we should note Tacopina went on to clarify that the payments made to Stormy Daniels were internal business records, and therefore he says they did not need to be filed with any government entities.
Now let's get to NBC News correspondent Sam Brock outside of Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. Sam, good morning. What's the latest where you are? Do we have any insight into what may have gone on behind the scenes with Trump and his inner circle since news broke of this indictment?
Yeah, Valerie, good morning, and it's very calm this morning right now. We did see some protesters last night. That is not the case as of yet here in West Palm Beach. And, it's interesting to your question, that interview, the clips that you just played with Joseph Tacopina really provide the best insight we've received so far as to what was going on at Trump camp, and specifically that he was, quote, shocked when he found about this. So for all of the broadcasting that took place about possible indictments coming a week and a half from now, this took former President Trump and his legal team completely off guard, according to Tacopina. And he also highlighted there, Valerie, the fact that they don't know exactly how many charges there are in this still sealed indictment, what the nature of them might be. And it was interesting, his language as well, when he talked about a, quote, confidentiality agreement with Stormy Daniels. You did not hear the words hush money payments coming out. And as Stephen just said a second ago, he wanted to make it very clearly, per Savannah's question, that these were internal filings, that they were not filed formally for, say, tax purposes with the federal government or with the FEC as potential election disclosures, that they were just internal. So we'll see how that actually plays out in court. But this is the first information we've really seen from anyone inside Trump world about what happened last night.
And Sam, Trump is obviously a major presence in Palm Beach due to his Mar-a-Lago resort. How is the town reacting to all of this?
Yeah, you look over my shoulder right now, Valerie, and it's $40–50 million estates on the water. It wouldn't necessarily be the Palm Beach residents that would go out and protest. We're seeing oftentimes people coming in from out of state or other parts of Florida and getting on a bridge that's pretty close to where I'm standing right now that connects West Palm with Palm Beach. And last night, this was kind of the scene there. You'll see about 15 to 20 protesters with their flags. I am told after I left last night, well into the 10 o'clock hour, that it got up to about 36 until police closed it down. We did have some conversations with folks there as well who see this as part of a larger narrative, not just about potentially illegal payments that were made or what kind of federal crime that could be linked to. Here's what one woman told me.
First they tried the Russian hoax, then they tried to impeach him, with the Ukraine thing. It's all that just keep going, keep trying to find him. But he's not going to get arrested. If he does, he's innocent, and he'll be back as our president in 2024.
I will also say some of the folks definitely had a nuanced understanding of this case, and specifically the idea that it's been 5 or 6 years now since the situation first came to light, and there hadn't been action until now from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and they're arguing there's a statute of limitations here that's been transgressed. I'll leave that to the attorneys, but there's definitely questions about why the federal government had looked at this, why Alvin Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, had also looked at it and had not decided to bring charges, and here we are today.
And Sam, we know Trump is expected to surrender and will be arraigned Tuesday. What do we know about the logistics of getting him from Florida to New York for that arraignment?
Right. Well, so we just heard from Tacopina, his attorney, a second ago, saying that that has not been fully worked out yet. But our understanding is that the former president would be leaving Mar-a-Lago at some point early next week, going to Palm Beach International Airport, which is about 10 or 15 minutes away from where I am right now, and ultimately ending up in southern Manhattan and going and being processed like anyone else would be under these circumstances, although certainly you wonder how much visual component will be attached to it, if there could be a quote-unquote perp walk or not. We'll find out, but definitely fingerprinting and a booking photo more than likely will end up out there in the public discourse at some point next week, guys.
Okay, Sam, with the updates from Florida, thanks so much.
All right, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. Glenn, good morning. Thanks for being here. So, of course, this indictment is still under seal, and Trump's lawyer is telling NBC News he's expected to be arraigned on Tuesday. Is that when we can expect to see this indictment, or is it possible it could be revealed earlier?
It's possible it could be revealed earlier, but it's most likely going to be released publicly at the time Donald Trump walks into court for his arraignment. Now, an arraignment is a first court appearance in a case. I tell my students at George Washington University that is the first eyeball to eyeball a defendant has with a judge. That is when a criminal case gets very real for everyone involved. The court will read the indictment, the charges to the defendant, unless Donald Trump's defense attorneys waive formal reading of the indictment. The defense attorneys will enter a not guilty plea. And then the most consequential discussion that I think we will see is, what does the judge do with Donald Trump pending trial? There may be discussions surrounding whether he should be prohibited from traveling outside the United States, for example. There may be discussions surrounding whether the judge should limit Donald Trump's speech or what he can post on the internet pending trial. We have all seen him say and post incendiary things that seem reasonably likely to inspire imminent lawlessness. We saw that play out on January 6th. So I suspect there will be at least a discussion of whether a partial or narrowly tailored gag order should be put in place. All of this is so uncharted that, I think we will be interested to see exactly how these discussions unfold.
Yeah, a defendant like none other, of course, as we've said, and we'll continue to say, this is unprecedented. And as a former federal prosecutor, what are the difficulties in trying a case under this type of intense spotlight? I know Congress is already asking, some members of Congress, asking Alvin Bragg to come testify before them already.
As a prosecutor who for 30 years had to make charging decisions, I tended to tune out all of the collateral consequences, all of the noise. So when you hear people say, well, this will only strengthen Donald Trump politically, or you hear people say this will damage Donald Trump politically, prosecutors should, and in my experience generally do, sort of tune that all out, set it aside, and they, present a case to the jury that is, the marshaling the facts and the law as best they can. And that's what I suspect Alvin Bragg's team will do. Now, there may be a circus atmosphere going on outside the courtroom, but I think inside the courtroom, you're going to see the rule of law prevail. When you see Donald Trump's lawyer, Joe Tacopina, say all sorts of things, all of that will melt away, and the facts and the law will rule in the courtroom, and 12 citizens who are sitting in that jury box as the conscience of the community will decide whether Donald Trump is guilty or not guilty.
All right, Glenn Kirshner, a lot of uncharted stuff going on here. Thanks for breaking that down for us.
Trump's indictment might have major implications for the upcoming 2024 presidential race. The unprecedented grand jury decision doesn't stop the former president from running for office, but it does raise questions about what's next for his campaign and his political rivals. NBC News senior Washington correspondent and News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has the details.
Hey there, Stephen and Valerie. Good morning to you both. We are seeing former President Trump's Republican rivals rallying around him this morning, for the most part, echoing his attacks on this investigation, with Mr. Trump himself defiant. A show of support this morning from potential competitors in the GOP presidential race, lining up to back up Donald Trump's claim his indictment is politically motivated.
This appears to be just one more example, Wolf, of the kind of two-tiered justice system.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, not officially in the race, but widely seen as Mr. Trump's closest competitor for the Republican nomination, accusing the Manhattan District Attorney of stretching the law to target a political opponent. Mr. Trump himself has said even if indicted, his campaign would continue.
I wouldn't even think about leaving.
His team already fundraising, selling these new T-shirts overnight featuring the date of the indictment. The former president has used the investigations against him to rally supporters.
And people see it's bullshit, and they go and they say, it's unfair.
For now, Mr. Trump's getting backup from allies on Capitol Hill, too. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy saying the GOP-controlled House will hold Alvin Bragg and his unprecedented abuse of power to account. Many of the attacks against Bragg describing the DA as a Soros-backed prosecutor, a reference to George Soros, a liberal megadonor and for years target of conservatives. Soros was among those who donated to a political action committee that supported Bragg's campaign, but a Soros spokesperson tells NBC News George Soros has never met, spoken with, or otherwise communicated with Alvin Bragg. Bragg has criticized the former president, something Mr. Trump's allies have also seized upon to cast him as a partisan prosecutor.
And I've seen him up front and seen the lawlessness that he can do.
And he's touted going after the former president legally, according to the New York Times, saying in 2021, it is a fact that I have sued Trump more than 100 times. The Manhattan DA investigation itself has been in the spotlight, with top prosecutors resigning last year, including Mark Pomerantz, who, frustrated at the pace of the inquiry when he resigned, wrote the probe had turned into a legal equivalent of a plane crash under Bragg and was due to pilot error, something Bragg pushed back on. As far as the political sphere, Mr. Trump's poll numbers really haven't moved much after other news events that could potentially have been damaging, like after the FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago home. And the most recent polling, including some out just this week, has shown his support has actually grown compared to last month. Back to you.
All right, Hallie Jackson, thanks so much.
All right, time now for a check of your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now. Good morning, Angie.
Morning, guys. That latest cross-country storm system is on the move and impacting the east through the next day or so. We already have heavy rain in place for parts of really the Midwest extending down into the south, and we've got snow to deal with, too. We're also going to set up for the potential to see some really strong storms later today. This could be a dangerous situation, developing with the conditions that are set in place for this afternoon. We have the potential to see some strong, even long-track tornadoes in many locations. We'll talk more about that here in a moment. But we're also going to watch for some intense wind gusts. We could see up to 70, 75-mile-per-hour winds at times. We know that's going to be problematic for damage with power outages and such. And we also could see some golf ball size to even tennis ball size hail. Difficult situations for this afternoon. It includes a large area. More than 15 million people are included in this. And there's that risk for EF2 or higher tornadoes. This isn't just a daylight hours kind of thing. I really want to stress that point because we know that when tornadoes come into the overnight hours, they're much more deadly. And we could see that happening after the sun goes down in a lot of these places. Des Moines, St. Louis, Memphis, as far south as Greenville, all included in this. If you're in that kind of shaded area, even into the green, Detroit, Chicago, you're not out of the woods. You'll still see some of these stronger storms likely developing in your area. But the best chance for tornadoes is where you saw that red. We're also going to watch for the potential for some flooding concerns with heavy rain working through tomorrow. We have really saturated grounds in a lot of these places that have had repeated storms over the past few weeks or so. So the grounds are saturated. The streams are a little swollen. It won't take much to see some flooding concerns. So remember not to drive through those flooded roadways. In addition to that, this system also has a wintry aspect to it. The winter weather alerts are up to 11 million. We've got wind alerts up to low 60s as far as the millions are concerned. And Minneapolis and through Rapid City are going to be dealing with the heavy snow working through, but also in addition to that, with those really strong winds, we could see some blowing snow, reducing visibility to even as low as zero. Travel is going to be tough in this area. You see going from South Dakota into parts of Minnesota and even as far east as the upper peninsula of Michigan. This is going to be something here that we deal with through at least today and tomorrow. We'll see those damaging winds lasting through today and tomorrow as well, guys. So power outages with heavy, wet snow is going to be a problem.
Is it normal for winter to hang on up north this
this is technically a spring storm on the move, and we're kind of setting up for that kind of, that part of the year. But yes, of course, we still have the cold temperatures, so northern side of the system, snow it is.
Still got to get used to being up north. All right.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Angie.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.